Today, we're gonna talk about why spirituality and all this woo-woo shit actually works, even if it's BS. Tarot, astrology, Reiki, witchcraft, manifestation, spiritual forms of meditation, even religion to a great extent. How come millions of people around the world with all sorts of backgrounds swear by their faith despite the lack of concrete evidence? If you clicked on this video, you're probably part of one of the two following categories. One, you identify as a complete non-believer and a skeptic. You see spirituality as woo-woo, as complete hocus pocus. For you, it's just a way for people to cope with the fact that there's nothing more to life than what we see with our own two eyes right now. If you are part of group 2, however, then you are spiritual to some extent, and that can go from being just curious and agnostic to having this strong gut feeling and inner knowing that there are transcendental forces and a higher power that consciously we can't really see. I myself am very much in group 2, but that wasn't always the case. As someone who was raised very atheist, I sometimes still struggle with a little bit of an inner conflict when it comes to all of this. And since I am someone who gets a little bit obsessed, admittedly, when I notice this type of inner conflict within myself, I decided that I would get to the bottom of it and that I would not let it go until I resolve this paradox. By the end of this video, you will either feel at ease with your current faith and you will be able to move on with a stronger conviction that you currently have at your disposition, one of the most powerful tools for success and happiness. Or you will at the very least have a newfound respect for people who do have a faith and believe in spirituality, and you will just let them be because you will now understand just how powerful and helpful of a tool it is. So to understand why this woo-woo shit actually works really well, we're gonna look at 3 very common and honestly valid doubts and concerns that question the validity and credibility of spirituality.
How can so many people give validity to spirituality, although these transcendental forces they talk about are literally invisible and intangible? It is woo-woo and completely unrealistic. There is no scientific evidence to prove any of this.
Let's break down this argument. So these forces are invisible and intangible. Sure, but is that a valid reason to rule them out? Yes, they are invisible and they are intangible. Yet, a ton of people around the world make a lot of money selling ways to benefit from and channel these forces, meaning that a ton of people spend their precious money on it repeatedly. Why, you might ask? Because what they get in return are very visible and tangible results. The point I'm trying to get to here is that this particular argument doesn't work because we as humans are governed by invisible and intangible things way more than visible and tangible ones. I remember so clearly when I was in high school and my teacher made me realize for the first time that advertising and marketing appeals mainly to the irrational and the emotional. Our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions, and our perception of reality, all of which are, you guessed it, intangible and invisible, have the biggest impact on our lives, on our behavior, and on our actions. In chapter 2 of the book Sapiens, entitled The Tree of Knowledge, the author Harari explains that one of the most unique features of humans is that we use our language to speak about fictions. And the fact that we can speak about fictions is specifically the reason why we can live amongst groups of more than 150 people despite being complete strangers to one another. We can now live in societies of millions of people specifically thanks to the creation of myths, be that the myth of the nation, the myth of culture, or the myth of religion. Because suddenly, any stranger that is part of that same invisible group that you are a part of becomes subconsciously some sort of metaphorical sister or brother of yours. Harari even takes the example of private companies to say that the lawyers who are hired to write all the legal papers to make the invisible private company exist are in many ways similar to sorcerers and witches who cast spells. The main difference is that we as a society of millions of people have all agreed to believe in and trust in this invisible and intangible thing called the legal system, which gives it its power and legitimacy. In many ways, therefore, we are controlled by invisible forces more than visible ones. Ever since the cognitive revolution, Sapiens has thus been living in a dual reality. On the one hand, the objective reality of rivers, trees, and lions, and on the other hand, the imagined reality of gods, nations, and corporations. As time went by, the imagined reality became ever more powerful, so that today, the very real survival of rivers, trees, and lions depends on the grace of imagined entities such as gods, nations, and corporations. Isn't that crazy to think about? I read that book years ago, and I remember it was truly one of those moments that just changed my whole understanding of reality. It really widened it. The second part of the argument is that it is woo-woo and unrealistic. But what does realistic even mean in this context? Because it feels like it means that you should only base yourself on things that you see with your two eyes or you have experienced in the past. By that same logic, if humans had been realistic forever, we wouldn't be able to fly in the sky or use the internet, or let's not even get into AI. Our great-great-great-grandparents would have called us absolutely crazy and probably would have sent us for a little while in the mental hospital for believing in something like AI.
Number 3 is your subconscious is a damn memory bank. It is not a fucking vision board. What does this mean? Simple. It cannot create new outcomes. Your subconscious cannot create new outcomes. The only thing that it can do is replay what it already knows, what is familiar. Based on your experiences, traumas, triggers, that, it's just going to keep replaying. It can't do anything else. It can't create a new outcome for you.
This is why spirituality is so powerful, because it helps you override what is now a dysfunctional conditioning and envision things in the future that you haven't yet experienced. In that sense, it is very much a superpower. Also, a lot of what being realistic is risk aversion. It is risk aversion based on your fears, on the environment you grew up in, and on your past experiences. But a lot of what growth is the complete opposite. It is specifically seeking discomfort, aka the unknown.
Every time you try something new, your brain will literally treat it like it's a threat, right? So that is why growth feels like anxiety. Right? Growth makes you anxious. Growth seems hard to some people. It's not really hard. Your nervous system just thinks that you are in danger because you are evolving. And the reason why it feels that way is because you are doing something different than a norm.
Lastly, regarding this point, I feel like a lot of people conflate being unrealistic with being unreasonable. You can absolutely be simultaneously unrealistic and reasonable. You can decide that despite the cards you were dealt in life, or any mental or physical or hormonal issues that you have to deal with and obstacles, and despite the very low chances of success, despite all that, you're still going to try your best to pursue certain endeavors while remaining reasonable enough to have a roof over your head, food to eat, not put your health in danger, not hurt the people around you, and accept the fact that if everything fails, then you will be okay living out plan B, C, E, W with no regrets.
It's not just that we're alive in the universe. The universe is alive within us. And that discovery borders on the spiritual.
Yeah.
And it's a scientific result. So when I look up at night, I never feel small. I feel large. I feel as large as the universe itself, because that's where we came from. We're a participant in a great unfolding story of cosmic evolution.
There are two things to address regarding this whole lack of scientific evidence discussion. First of all, science can only prove what it can measure, right? We'll talk about this a little more in a second when it comes to quantum physics, because I think quantum physics is a perfect example of the limitations of science, because even the brightest physicists aren't able to fully understand the inner workings of quantum mechanics, even with the most brilliant equations. Scientists themselves will tell you that as of now, we can only understand a small part of the universe, also a small part of the brain. Even in that Neil deGrasse Tyson interview that you just saw a clip of a moment ago, the interviewer asks him if we have found a scientific explanation of why and how we have evolved as a species compared to every other species to believe in imaginary things. And Neil deGrasse Tyson said that no. We still have no understanding of this. And by the way, I love science. That's why I watch these types of interviews in the first place. But I just don't think it's able to explain everything yet. Now, the second and main thing regarding this whole argument is that yes, there is no scientific concrete evidence as to the existence of a higher power and these transcendental forces. However, there is very real hard scientific evidence and data when it comes to the life-changing benefits that having a spiritual faith and having spiritual practices have on people's mental and physical health, meaning on their entire lives. Let's think about the scientific method for a second. Before putting antidepressants on the market, for instance, a bunch of scientists, physicians, neuroscientists, psychologists, psychiatrists, had to conduct numerous studies to collect empirical data to say that yes, these pills can be put on the market, they cure clinical depression, and there's no big adverse effect. Following that same exact scientific method, let's look at some scientists who have conducted studies to prove that faith and spiritual practices were extremely beneficial in healing people. Let's first look at this interview with Dr. Lisa Miller, where she talks about her PhD thesis, namely the neuroscience of spirituality and mental health, and how spirituality impacts depression, addiction, and suicide rates.
We put people in the MRI, people to recover from depression through a deepening of spiritual life. And what we found was that they had thick cortex. The cortex is processing power across regions of perception, reflection, and orientation. They effectively had strengthened the bicep of their spiritual awareness through suffering. And once they were strong, for the next lift, the next time something very heavy was thrown their way, they were 75% protected against recurrence, and that went up to 90% if they were otherwise at hard risk.
What she's saying here is that if you had depression and heal thanks to spirituality, the second time you have something akin to depression happening to you, you're gonna be 75% more protected and resilient. She also talks about this interesting study where they found that people with very strong faiths were 2.5 times more likely to have gone through something very traumatic in the past. And the reason for this is that deep despair ushers you into transcendental awareness.
When everything in your life is completely falling apart and you have no logical kind of like defense mechanism left, you have no emotional support, you are actually at your lowest point when everything else around you has abandoned you and failed you. And in that moment, when the mind is no longer capable of helping you, the intellect is no longer capable of helping you, the emotions are no longer capable of helping you, in that moment, some people find something within themselves, something so deep and so primitive. It's this weird connection to the divine. Like that's the language that we use. In those hardest moments is when you find God. I'm not saying Christian God, I'm not saying Hindu God, I'm talking about the phenomenological experience that we can look at in scholarly publications about charisma that are published in a religious way. There's something deep within you.
In other words, as your sense of reality breaks, it ushers you into this deeper understanding of the world.
If we have a strong personal spirituality, we are 80% less likely to become addicted using DSM criteria. 80%.
I mean, that's in scientific parlance, that's like off the chain.
Off the chart.
Nothing's 80%.
Right.
Honestly, as someone with a very addictive personality, I can totally attest to that.
Right now, the number one killer of young adults in our country is suicide. A young adult, 19-year-old, is more likely to die by his or her own hand than in an auto accident. Well, there's a meta-analysis, a study of studies conducted by Woowoo and colleagues that showed a 62% decreased relative risk of completed suicide. And that goes to 82% when our spiritual awareness is shared in a group.
That's wild. The fact that it reduces by 62% the chance of going through with the suicide, but also the fact that if you have this shared spirituality with other people, it goes up even more to 82%. But I'm not surprised again, because when I talk about spirituality with other people who also are into it, it's one of the best feelings ever. I then decided to do a little more research just to find hard data to corroborate what Dr. Lisa Miller was saying, and it wasn't really hard to find. On the left, as you can see, I have found this PubMed article on the National Library of Medicine website. I have included the screenshot if you want to check it out yourself. The article is called Spirituality, Religiousness, and Mental Health, a Review of the Current Scientific Evidence. On the right side, there's a screenshot that is from a table included in the article, where on the left side, you have an array of mental health problems. And on the right side, you have the summary of results, whereby In general, for the great majority of all these mental health problems, higher levels of what they call S/R, meaning spirituality and or religion, are generally associated with lower levels of all of these mental health problems, which is amazing. But to be honest, data and hard scientific evidence aside, like I said, I can attest to all of this myself. I've struggled with mental health issues pretty much my whole life, but I remember when I was in the thick of it a couple of years ago still, I was so envious of religious people because I didn't believe in anything, and that was it was driving me crazy. Like, I felt so empty, and there was nothing to help me cope with the fact that there's gonna be mostly pain moving on. Like, life is just difficult. Somewhere along the way, I discovered spirituality and I kind of formed my own individual relationship to it. We're gonna get to that, by the way, that's very important. But now I have this strong conviction that we were put on this earth as spirits just to have the human experience for a little while. And also, one of the biggest beliefs I have developed from spirituality, and I guess that confirms what these scientists were saying, was that every obstacle in my life is meant to teach me something and is part of a bigger story of my life. And so now every time I'm going through pain and suffering, I always try to find a way to make use of that suffering to get to the other side and grow even better afterwards. And therefore, I am meant to experience it all, the good, the bad, the human. And this all truly, truly gave me a sense of resilience, gratitude, and stoicism that I really didn't have before. What many of you might be thinking at this point is, okay, but isn't this just all a very beautifully packaged explanation of the placebo effect? And guess what? You're not wrong. Let's get into it.
Isn't this all just the placebo effect? And if it is, doesn't the awareness of that fact defeat its entire purpose?
To dissect this argument, let's look at the exact definition of the placebo effect. The placebo effect is a phenomenon where a person's physical or mental health improves after receiving a dummy treatment that has no therapeutic value simply because they believe the treatment will work. So in that sense, it does feel like spirituality and faith do fit that description. Namely, that the very act of believing in spirituality is what will improve your psyche, will give you more motivation, resilience, etc. But it's not as simple as that, because it doesn't work like a placebo pill, for instance. The placebo pill is used when scientists want to test the efficacy of a new drug, and so they give one group the real drug with the active ingredients in it, and they give the second group a placebo pill that has nothing in it, but they tell that group that there's medicine in it. Therefore, for the placebo pill to work, that group needs to fully believe that there's active ingredients in that pill. And if they knew that it was a placebo, it would defeat the entire purpose. And that is why asking the question, doesn't the awareness of the placebo effect defeat its very purpose, is a very, very valid concern. But when it comes to spirituality, it is incomplete. And this is where quantum physics comes back into play. When it comes to spirituality, the secret is in the uncertainty. It is in the unknowing. It is in the fact that there is equally little evidence to prove that higher forces and transcendental forces and a higher power does exist and does not exist. Remember learning about Schrodinger's cat in school? It was that Austrian scientist who made that hypothetical experiment where you lock a cat in a box and you insert poisonous gas. But the thing with that gas is that it only has a 50% chance of killing that cat. And the key takeaway of that thought experiment was that until you open that box after having done all that, the cat is in a state called a state of superposition, where it is both dead and alive at the same time, technically. And it is precisely the act of opening the box and looking at what's inside that forces nature's decision. That is the very essence of quantum physics, and it's why I think most of us have this fascination and love-hate relationship to it. Every year, I think, with my dad, we'll watch like a documentary on quantum physics just to check if maybe we could understand a little bit more about it. And we always end up even more intrigued, but equally confused. But regarding that experiment, it's kind of the same thing here. If you are agnostic, for instance, which I think I am still to some extent, and I think many of you might be, then you believe that it is possible for a higher power to exist, and it is also possible for a higher power to not exist. And that is when you, a human with a will, can use your power of intention to collapse the superposition and choose to believe in the existence of a higher power, which will have a huge impact on your life, on your relationship, and on every aspect of your life, honestly. Because if both are currently unprovable, why not choose the one where, number one, you have a gut instinct that there is something, and two, the one that will bring you a lot of benefits. I also learned recently about a really cool extra added benefit to all of this, which is that the act of choosing feels really good to us as humans. And this has been proven by something called self-determination theory, as explained by Dr. K of the Healthy Gamer GG channel.
So what self-determination theory tells us is that if you start to make choices, it doesn't matter what choice you make, but you make a choice for yourself. It can be something as simple as, I'm gonna drink this, or I'm gonna drink this. Now, when you start to make those choices, something really cool happens. Your internal sense of control, direction, and purpose in life will increase.
You can choose to believe, you can choose to not believe, but make a choice and make sure that it is made from you and for you. I personally choose to trust in spirituality because since we were born, we were made to distrust everything in this world, and I find it very draining. And so I love having this thing that I could just pour my heart to and that is harmless without having to engage in paranoid-like thoughts. I also choose to believe that the reason why humans all over the planet, without even knowing of each other for the longest time throughout history, have all been spiritual and believed in this higher power. And I believe that it's not a coincidence, and that the reason why is that so many of us feel that there is a higher power, but we just can't see it with our 5 basic human senses. But we can still feel that there is something. And ever since I chose to trust, I make a lot of little choices every day that really make my life more fun and enjoyable. For instance, I'll dream about someone or I'll think about someone, and the same day they'll call me or text me, even though we haven't spoken for weeks or months. And to me, I decide and I choose that that's just the universe sending me a message of some sort. Also, when I look at the time on my phone and it's like 222, 444, 555, which happens every day, I also choose to believe that it's the universe telling me, keep going, girl. Keep going. When a lady on YouTube is telling me that her tarot cards are saying that I should push through because there's wonderful things waiting for me ahead, I choose to believe that. And guess what? After choosing to collapse that superposition and believing all of these things, I feel so much hope, I feel so much gratitude, which then makes me make very different decisions in my life, which then improves my life drastically, which is exactly what the tarot lady said. Listen, if you get it, you get it. If you know, you know.
Believing in some higher power that is here to help us and guide us, it's too good to be true. All this manifestation stuff is utter BS. We just cannot get what we want through the magical power of wishful thinking.
And to that I say, that's absolutely true. If you want to manifest anything in your life, obviously you have to do a lot of planning and you have to take a lot of action. That is absolutely true. But as we talked about earlier, you equally need wishful thinking to fuel said actions and to not give up when things get hard and when there's no visible sign of success in sight. Even if you're not spiritual, by the way, if you choose to listen to certain people over others, that is, motivational people who tell you to fight for your dreams and not give up and just see obstacles as lessons and stepping stones. If you choose to listen to them rather than the people who are hyper realistic and tell you to not take too many risks, yada, 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 then that is 100% wishful thinking on your part. Because statistically, despite what those motivational people are saying very eloquently, it is still very irrational to pursue your dreams. But like we saw in that clip of the lady who was talking about neuroscience and how visualization helps a lot to bring about things that you haven't yet experienced, wishful thinking is the only thing that will help you ignite these invisible things within you that will help bring into your life things that you're currently not seeing in your 3D environment. For a majority of history, believing that there are transcendental forces and a higher power conspiring to help you overcome the craziest obstacles and are conspiring to help you be happy and fulfill your dreams have helped humanity achieve the greatest feats. Most queens, kings, inventors, presidents, and other important historical figures have had and still have spiritual guides by their side, because spirituality gives them that extra resilience. It also gives them the vision as someone who is supposed to achieve great things. And whether you believe it or not, the stats don't lie. The fact that a majority of great historical figures have had a relationship to spirituality of some sort, that proves just how powerful of a tool it is.
If you believe in God, take as much pressure off of yourself as you can and apply that pressure to Him. I think that's the only advice that I would give to an artist, is to find your higher power and connect.
I myself noticed that, we all go through ups and downs. When I'm in one of my downs and I'm just like unproductive, I'm unable to take care of myself, I notice that always coincides with me not being spiritual and engaging in spiritual practices at all. And conversely, once I hit rock bottom and I kind of like wake up, and then I immediately lock into that thing that I was talking about where I'm like, okay, what was this obstacle and what is this current rut that I'm in trying to teach me? When I then start to engage in my spiritual practices, I meditate more, I journal. When I go in nature and reconnect with trees and water and I look at the sky and I just reconnect with everything, it is insane how quickly things just fall back and I get back on track without that much resistance or effort. I want to end with this clip from Trevor Noah's What Now podcast, in which he interviews Adam Grant, an organizational psychologist who talks about having been called a logic bully by others.
What's like your pet peeve when you talk to people?
Astrology.
Damn. Okay. And then prosecutor.
Prosecutor is my biggest problem. So this is what happens whenever someone tries to give me a horoscope, is I start to just smack it down with data.
Oh, you have a problem being a prosecutor.
Oh, huge problem. I've been called a logic bully, Trevor. And you think that's funny. My wife had to explain that's not a compliment.
So he's being called a logic bully. Later in the podcast, he talks about the fact that he sometimes likes to lay logic traps for people to fall into. And finally, he recounts this story where he was having a casual conversation with someone and that person just happened to ask him for his astrological sign. And he said that he lost control of himself and went on this huge rant. The problem is not whether he is right or wrong, by the way. To be honest, I'm not fully into astrology like that either, but I do think it's just such a fun conversation to have with people, and it's a great icebreaker. The problem here is that he feels this intense need to impose his views onto others. In this way, this guy is no better than any super religious or super spiritual person who's proselytizing and trying to impose their beliefs and worldview onto others. It's like, why does he care so much? So many of these people who claim to be so logic-driven, you can just see, everybody except them can see that they are very much ruled by some sort of anger of some sort, and they are just as emotional as everybody else. If it doesn't harm anyone else, if it makes other people happy and brings them a lot of benefits to their life, what's the problem? This shows that once again, and I talked about this in my woke versus anti-woke video, two people sitting at the extremes, and in this case, it's the extreme non-believer and the extreme believer, they're actually a lot closer to each other than each of them are to the person who is a little bit more moderate, even though that person is technically on their side. I wanted to insert this clip at the end because the biggest takeaway with all of this is that spirituality is best used first and foremost as an individual tool to connect with oneself and the world that surrounds you. Don't get me wrong, even though it is an individual tool first and foremost, like I said, it's also a great bonding tool. It's such a great way to connect with strangers or even grow closer to people around you. For instance, we talked about astrology earlier. I'm sure most of you noticed, but when people talk about astrology, all of a sudden, it's a lot easier to talk about themselves. Like they'll share many more details when they use astrology as the vessel. They'll say, my sign is Libra or Pisces, and that is why I can get stubborn, but I'm also I have a big heart, etc., etc. It's such a great tool for small talk and connection. It's a wonderful bonding tool, but that's For it to stay healthy, people need to preserve their individual sovereignty and relationship to spirituality. It's kind of like bonding with a new person that has a dog because you have a dog. You guys can start sharing little tips, you guys can organize play dates with the dogs, but that other person should not tell you how you should love your dog and how you should raise your dog. That is your unique and sacred relationship. All in all, spirituality is a very powerful tool and vessel. And humans need vessels of all kinds to feel connected with the world, to express themselves, and to feel grounded, no matter whether there is scientific evidence to measure said vessel or not. All right, that's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. Honestly, this was like one of my favorite videos to make. I'll probably make more on the subject. If you liked it, let me know. And if you have any other thoughts also, I'd love to hear them in the comments. And I'll see you very soon in the next video. Bye.